Have you ever heard the story of the 5 kids that went camping? It all started with
The campfire crackled, spitting embers into the inky blackness that pressed in from the surrounding woods. The laughter from earlier had died, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Liam shifted uncomfortably in his camp chair, his gaze darting towards the tree line. He'd always loved the woods, the solitude, the feeling of being truly detached. But tonight, the usual tranquility felt brittle, like thin ice about to shatter. They were just 5 friends, a group who had been camping together since they were kids. Liam, always the cautious one, Maya, the free spirit, Ben, the joker, Sarah, the steady hand, and Chloe, the quiet observer. They were all in their late 20s now, the carefree days of teenage camping a distant memory. Tonight, though, the camaraderie felt strained. An argument had flared up earlier, a petty disagreement about who had brought the better marshmallows, but it had left a lingering unease. Anyone else feeling a little off? Liam finally asked, breaking the silence. Ben chuckled nervously. Just you being paranoid. Lee, probably spooked yourself with all those ghost stories you were telling earlier. Maya, ever the pragmatist, chimed in. It's just the dark, Liam. And the fact that we're surrounded by trees. Sarah nodded in agreement. Maybe we should turn in. I'm tired. Chloe, however, didn't offer her usual quiet reassurance. She was unusually still, staring into the fire, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames. Liam watched her, and not tightening in his stomach, something felt profoundly wrong. They dispersed to their tents. Liam, usually a sound sleeper, found himself wide awake. He listened to the symphony of the forest, the chirping of crickets, the whisper of the wind, and something else, a faint, rhythmic thud, barely audible above the natural noises. He put it down to his overactive imagination and tried to force himself to relax. Then, the scream. It was short, sharp, and abruptly cut off. Liam shot up in his sleeping bag, his heart pounding in his chest. He ripped open the tent flap, his hand instinctively reaching for the dull camping knife he kept tucked under his pillow. The other tents were still and silent. He listened, his breath shallow. A twig snapped somewhere in the darkness. He unzipped his tent fully and stumbled out into the clearing. Hello, he called out, his voice trembling. Is everyone okay? Silence. He moved towards Maya's tent, his footsteps slow and measured. He called out her name, then Ben's, then Sarah's. No response. His stomach churned. This wasn't some silly prank. He found Maya first. The front of her tent was ripped open, exposing the interior. The beam of his flashlight illuminated the awful scene. She lay still, her eyes wide and vacant, a crimson stain blooming across her chest. The thudding he had heard earlier was now clear. It had been the sound of something heavy hitting the ground. He stumbled back, a wave of nausea washing over him. He could feel his own heart battering against his ribs, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He had to warn the others. He checked Ben's tent next. Empty. His sleeping bag was still there, neatly rolled up, but Ben was gone. And then, Sarah's tent, also empty. He turned towards Chloe's tent at the edge of the clearing, a dread mounting with every step. He could hear her inside, a low, almost inhuman humming. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the zipper of her tent. He couldn't go in. Not yet. He needed to think, to make sense of this madness. Even though a terrifying conclusion was forming in his mind, he backed away, slowly, his eyes fixed on the dark shape of Chloe's tent. He turned and ran, his boots pounding on the soft earth, the frantic beat of his heart echoing in his ears. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to get out, to get away from this nightmare. He ran for what felt like hours, the sounds of the forest seeming to mock his every move. He stumbled and fell, scraping his knees and palms, but he kept going. Finally, as the first sliver of dawn began to paint the sky with a pale light, he reached the main road. He frantically flagged down a passing car, his story incoherent and panicked, his clothes caked with mud and leaves. The police arrived hours later. They found Maya, still inside her tent. They found Ben and Sarah, their bodies hidden in a shallow grave deeper in the woods. But Chloe was gone. The humming from her tent had vanished. Days turned into weeks, then months. Liam, haunted by the horror, cooperated fully with the investigation, but they found no trace of Chloe, no weapon, no motive. Her family was bewildered. She had always been so quiet, so gentle. Liam never went back to those woods. The image of Maya's vacant eyes, the thudding sound, the inhuman humming, they were imprinted on his brain, a constant, visceral reminder of the night that shattered his life. He often found himself looking over his shoulder, listening for that faint, rhythmic thud. He knew, deep down, that the woods still held a dark secret, and he was now just another witness, forever branded by the